My name is Reverend Lynn Capron from the First Presbyterian Church of Verona.
That's not part of your name. I'm Reverend Mike Capron, and I'm called to the First Presbyterian Church of Elmwood Park.
All right, go ahead. Tell your joke.
All right. So the word is precarious. And here's an image that I found yesterday for precariousness. All right. Imagine a bunch of quarters stacked one on top of the other, forming kind of a tower of quarters. And now imagine a little frog on top of the stack of quarters. And he wants to jump, but he knows that his position is precarious because the whole coins will probably go.
Right. And Mike told me this joke yesterday, and I thought, oh my goodness, that sounds like the situation that we're in as we face this summertime where, we have to make some decisions as a country. We have to make decisions as states. We have to make decisions as businesses, as families. The governor of New Jersey just said the schools will be closed for the rest of the school year. So that's the decision that's going to help institutions like churches you sort of figure out, what do we do when the governor says we can start to regather? When is that going to happen? So we're all sort of looking to each other for decision making. And right now in New Jersey, we're certainly still at the stage where we can't meet in person. It's not the right thing to do right now. And when is that going to change? And if it does change, if it's not clear,
it's going to feel precarious.
It's going to be very precarious. One church may do this, another church may do this. Church members may want this, other church members may want this. And I'm just already praying for our church board members, one by one, that personally, that God would protect them, strengthen them, and give them, the spiritual, emotional ability to make these decisions when we have to.
And, sort of our relationships and emotional bonds are so important in those kind of circumstances, because board members need to trust each other, and we need to all be able to work together. So we were reading a book about that uses an interesting word.
Yeah.
It's the word bids. You were going to tell us about that?
Yeah. So and I've moved a lot, so I've had to learn how to make these kind of bids quite a bit. And if you are a member or a participant of a church, you also know how to do these bids. It's just part of being a church member. But it goes something like this. You stroll up to somebody, whether you know them or not, and you may say something like, oh, isn't it a beautiful day outside? The sun is really great. And the other person can either say, yeah, and maybe turn their attention to something else, or they can say, yeah.
It's gorgeous. Did you see the flowers over there? See how that invites a little more engagement? I've accepted the bid.
Right. And so then the next person would say, yeah, and then maybe they would complain that it had been rainy all week, or they would talk about what they did in the sun or something. But it's these little tiny things that are just very obvious and very human. And most of the time, we don't have to think about them too much. They just kind of happen.
And we had a moment yesterday where we were discussing what could have been a slightly tense topic, and we had our computers open and we were looking at things. And I noticed that you were frustrated about, some technical glitch that you were working on. And it seemed like a high level of frustration for me. And you made a really clear bid.
And it was a clear bid, but it was also, I was making myself vulnerable.
You were, and that's why it worked.
Yeah.
So you said something like, I'm afraid that you're going to lose interest because I'm stuck with this technical thing, and go off and do something else, and we're not going to get to finish the conversation.
Yeah.
And what that told me was that this was probably way more important to you than I realized it was on an emotional level. And I recognized that. I'm like, oh, all right, I did have some other plans in my head, and I got to put those aside. Now, earlier in our marriage, that would have gone differently.
Oh, very differently.
I would have gone off and done this other stuff. And then like an hour later, I would have come back and noticed you were in a bad mood, and I wouldn't have known why.
And neither would I, probably.
And so the fact that we've had enough miles under our belt, and that we're kind of tuned because we're both reading this book together. I'm like, wow, you made a bid and I accepted it, and that worked.
Yeah, and I think the ability to think about courage and vulnerability and how we reach out to each other when our nerves are shattered, our endurance is pushed about to the end, and we're all sort of, you need to rely on God when you've run out of your own strength, and we've all been there and back several times already. So we're going to be focusing on relationships a little bit. What's the name of that author?
That was John Gutman, and actually he's written a ton of books. I forgot the title of the one we're in. We'll tell you tomorrow.
Well, we're going to be talking about John Gutman a lot, because I think we can always use information about working in relationships.
Can I close with my cheesy image for God?
Oh, please do.
Yes. Okay. So God is like the super glue that holds your stack of coins together, so you can jump.
Isn't he adorable? All right. May God bless you today. Bye-bye.